And last, hi, I'm Sue Rieger, proud principal of Showalter Middle School. Hi, everyone.
Thank you, everyone, for introductions. Welcome any guests that are here or online with us today. We're going to need an approval of the agenda. Okay, motion?
I'm moving to approve the agenda as presented.
Is there a second? So moving to second, we approve the agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. Agenda is approved, and we'll go right in. So we have three topics today. Bond refunding, strategic plan update, and school improvement plan update from Showalter Middle School. So we're going to start with the bond refunding, and which is why we have our bond counsel here from Piper Sandler, or what's the word?
We're your underwriter.
Underwriter, sorry, now that's a different person, yeah.
Yeah.
So the underwriter, so we try and use this session kind of as a school bond 101 session, because we have two board members and the board member who has not been through the school bond cycle before, so there's a moderate amount of complexity that goes into doing school bonds and so forth. So I'm going to start, just ask a few questions, and then I don't know, did you want to?
Actually, a conversation is
Yeah,
probably
conversation is
more
typically,
productive.
we like
Yeah.
these things anyway, so that's, yeah, that'll work out there. So just to talk about school bonds a little bit, so in this district in 2016, we decided that we needed, so bond money is used to build, big projects like, so in the 2016, what we did was a major remodel, Foster High School, a major addition to Showalter Middle School, and then we added some modular buildings to the elementary schools so that we would have enough room in them to do the early childhood programming. And the way it works is, obviously you sit down and decide how much money is this all going to cost, and you come up with some estimates. And in this case, I believe it was about $99 million to do that. And then you put the plans together, and then you go out to the voters and ask them to vote to tax themselves to do that. And in this case, to approve a bond, school bond requires 60%, so it requires a supermajority of voters. And as I recall, I think we got over 64% or something at the time. And so the bond was approved, and we went forward. So typically, bonds, we think of a 20-year kind of cycle. So since, we're building structures that should last for a long time, we like to spread out the costs over a period. And typically we think of 20 years. School buildings typically don't get replaced every 20 years. But anyway, that's kind of the cycle that we spread it out over. And the bonds, are, I think what is municipal bonds is the category that we're in. So there's a little bit of twist which we can get into about, they aren't all, we don't all just issue 20-year bonds. Sometimes there's 10-year municipal bonds or shorter, depending, and we can talk about why we chose to do that. Which is why, this is, 10 years ago, so why there's so many more bonds that have come due, and so we're talking about refunding them. And, in order to manage this process, we hire a bond underwriter or advisor. Every school district does this because that market is relatively complicated.
And the easiest way to describe our role at Piper Sandler with the district, again, I'm Brian Swanson. I've been doing this for 28 years now, believe it or not, it's crazy. Inslee Ackerland's with me, she's been with us for 2 years about. Our role is to be between municipal issuers, and we hear what your needs are, and then we every day run the municipal market with investors, and we're trying to put the two together. So when a district needs to borrow funds to build a big project like a high school, if the voters approve it, then we will go out and find the investors to give you the loan, AKA the bond, to be able to get the proceeds to go and complete those projects. And that's exactly what we helped with in it was actually 2016 and 2018. Because a part of our job is to try and get the cost as low as possible, because we don't want it to overly burden taxpayers. So at the time, you knew you needed, it was a really unique number. It was $99,158,706. That's unique, but it worked. So you didn't need all of that right away in 16. So we sold enough in 16 to complete the projects that you needed to do over the next few years. And then when you had more projects to undertake in 2018, we sold the remainder. And that's why there were 2 issues done at that time. And Dave is absolutely right. Nationally, almost all municipal bonds are done over a 20-year period. Technically in Washington, you're allowed to go up to 40 years. No one's ever done it. I'm very thankful. The only entity that ever thought about doing that was the monorail. And when it got out in the paper how much interest they were going to be paying over 40 years, the monorail was dead the next day. So most districts across the nation, and specifically in Washington, do anywhere from, as you said, like 10 years to the longest ones that I have done are 25. There have been 2 folks that did 30. But as Dave was alluding to, you're always going to have more needs. So by doing 20 years, hopefully you can take care of projects, get something accomplished, and then come back to voters again at some point in the future and not have this debt that's dragged out for so long that impedes you from doing more work, which unfortunately the districts that did the 30-year debt, it worked great. They got the initial cost down, but now it's 20 years later and they have a lot more needs and are still out there causing them issues. So that's the big reason why folks do a 20-year repayment term. It usually fits in with a construction cycle over a long period of time.
So apparently, and I wasn't totally aware of this, but the discussion that went on back in 2016 was that there was thoughts that the district would go out for a bond sooner than 2028. We're now thinking 2028 because we need to replace one of our elementary schools. But apparently the thinking at the time was that it would be sooner than that, which is why the bonds were structured the way they were to run out about now. And so, but
there was a step down. We kept the rate at a certain
Yeah.
level for the first 10 years, and then we made room should you decide to go up for debt. So as Amy saw, your debt service taxes that were collected were about rough numbers, $8 million in 25. It's only going to be about 5.4 million in 26. And based on preliminary values from KKI, that's going to be about a 40-cent roughly drop in the tax rate. And that again was because at the time you knew you'd have more needs, you were focused on what you were doing at the time, but you wanted to plan ahead and make room. That's not a common thing. Yeah.
So just to explain, you know, if people look at their tax bills, they're going to see a thing called local school district, which is a line item there. And inside of that, there are basically 3 components for us. There's what we call our EP&O levy, which is our school operations levy, which has a mill rate. And then there's the capital or technology levy, which we have passed, which has its mill rate. And then there's the bond obligation, which has its mill rate. And so one of the things you'll notice about ours is that and we saw this in the presentation that Keiko did earlier, our bond mill rate is going to go down, as you mentioned, about 40 cents in 2026.
Yes.
This is up from a year because of the way the bonds were structured at the beginning. And so, but our capital levy will stay the same. Our EP&O actually is going to go up because the state is allowing us to collect more. So anyway, let's see. Oh yeah, the other interesting thing about bonds is that you know there's this thing called bond ratings. So every municipal issuer of bonds is rated in terms of its reliability or risk, or you know whatever you want to call it. And it's about, the financial, stability of whoever's issuing the bonds. So, we, in this district, used to have a higher bond rating. I think it was a AA2, which is quite high.
The third highest
And,
possible.
yeah, third highest, and then it's now come down 5 notches to a BAA1 because of the binding conditions. The interesting thing, or one of the questions for me is, you mentioned in your discussion that school district bonds, including ours, are backed by the state, which has a AAA rating. And so my first question, does it really matter what our bond rating is?
Well,
And if so, how?
prior to 2008,
Yeah,
investors weren't, there's enhanced ratings. So if you got insurance or had a state intercept or
Yeah.
school bond guarantee, that's considered an enhanced rating. Think of it like a rich uncle that's backstopping your loan. And then there's an underlying rating, which is the credit quality of the issuer itself, kind of like a FICO. Prior to 2008, investors, all they saw was the AAA, either the insurance company or at the time the AA1 of the state of Washington. So, oh, that's great, that's good. Well, as you all know, the CMO crisis, folks were caught bundling mortgages that were high quality, mortgages that were low quality, and everything was AAA. Well, the rating agencies got raked over the coals for that. A lot of the insurance companies went out of business because they couldn't have their model anymore and they lost their ratings. So underlying ratings became much more important. So investors do look at them. It will have an impact. The thing I'll say is that while your rating has gone down 5 notches, unfortunately you're a good company. Washington school districts have been getting hammered, for, I guess, a technical term. That's not the best word, but over the last couple of years, because as you know, financial conditions for Washington schools right now are really, really tough. And a lot of districts are in binding conditions or having negative enrollment and low balances. And the rating agencies, unfortunately, put a lot of importance on general fund balance. I personally don't think that's fair because your general fund has nothing to do with repayment of debt. Your bonds are outstanding, the debt service is fixed, voters are going to be taxed an amount to repay that debt service, whether or not you're here or not, those bonds will get repaid. But rating analysts and agencies look at it on a formula like this is a nationwide comparison, and not every district in the country works that way. Some states, believe it or not, it's all commingled into one fund, and there will be somebody at the office that walks across the street to the county treasurer's office, picks up a check, and is supposed to walk across the street and deposit the funds into the general fund account. Sometimes that doesn't happen. So Washington, it's a little unfair that the rating agencies put so much onus on general fund balance, but that's the reason.
so the question is, presumably with the lower fund rating, you'd have to pay a higher interest.
Yes.
But then the question is, in this situation, how much?
Big an impact.
I mean, is it a big deal? Is it a few pennies?
So in our world, a basis point is 1/100%.
Right,
So if your home mortgage right now, I'm just gonna pick a number from many years ago, say it's 4%. Would you care if you had a 3.99 or 4% home mortgage rate? Most people probably aren't gonna care. In our world, when we're selling municipal bonds, if we're getting a 2.78 or a 2.77 borrowing rate, we care. Those are mountains to us because we're fighting for every little bit that we can. So in answer to your question, the BAA1 rating, which is below the average in Washington underlying rating right now, is an A1, which would be 3 notches higher. I'm guessing, I'm trying to predict the future, but I would think that at most, that would be a 10 to 2/10 of a basis point difference in, or 10 basis points, 20 basis points, or 10 to 2/10% difference. So instead of getting, say, a 3% borrowing cost, you might get a 3.1% borrowing cost, maybe a 3.2, which does make a difference. When you're talking millions of dollars, it matters, which is why we fight so hard to try and get all the documentation. And Amy is going to sit through a rating call with me, and we're going to explain to the analysts all the good things that have happened in the last couple of years and try and get them to understand that you're starting the ship. But we will still be able to sell the bonds. And all the numbers that I'm presenting to you in this refunding take into account that potential penalty. And to be honest, I'm a conservative dork. I try and under-promise and over-deliver. So my hope is that not only the market improves, rates go down, as well as administration is doing things that may frustrate many of us. that is actually a boon to the municipal bond market because people fly to safety. And when the world is in chaos, so municipal bonds are in demand right now.
Yeah.
So between that and hopefully the fact that I have been conservative in my estimates, I would really be much happier if we do that. But again, I can't predict the future. We'll do our best.
Okay, so it does make a difference and we should, I mean, we've been on track obviously to improve our financial and CFO's done a great job and so, and we're on an upward trend for sure.
And I would
And
say
it's worth doing for
Yes.
a number of reasons,
I
this
would-
being one of them.
Yes, and I would say districts have asked us, should we worry about our fund balance for the bond rating to potentially the detriment of our programs? And I am a hard no. Your job is to service the community and provide programming that the community expects for your students. And if that means that you wind up in a position where your fund balance is not robust enough to satisfy a rating agency, so be it, because you're doing the work that you're supposed to be doing. So yes, the credit rating is lower, but I would not slash everything to satisfy a rating agency versus, providing a program that you think that the children.
Well, there's a bunch of other reasons to keep a good fund balance.
Yes, there are.
So,
But for that reason
but
alone.
that reason alone, okay,
Yeah.
yeah. So, and in terms of the impact on the taxpayers, it's gonna be pretty tiny.
I'm estimating that if we do get, and, the numbers are in here, but we'll speak to it. About $300,000 a year going forward for the remainder of life of the bond, so it's gonna be about 6 cents in tax rate.
Which translates in this community, like an average house, maybe 500,000, so that's $30 a year.
Yes,
basically, is
good
what
enough.
We're talking about. So,
Take every cent.
Yeah.
Take every cent.
yeah, I'm just saying, that's what it is, so we know kind of how it.
When we, at the end of all this, if we do have success, there will be one number that you'll probably communicate, that'll be the total savings amount.
Yeah.
And usually that makes more sense to people. If you're saying that we saved you 6 cents on your tax bill for the next 10 years, you're like, eh. But if you say we saved you approximately $2 million over the next few years, that seems to make more sense to folks.
Okay, so, so that's, where we are. So we're at a point where some of the bonds that were sold in 2016 are getting to the end of their life. So,
Yeah.
So to, refund them, is that the term we're using?
Yeah.
Yeah, refund them, we can, at a lower cost, and that's the 6 cents per mill rate. So, that's what the discussion is today. I guess one of the questions that I had, you mentioned, I don't know that do we have a choice in timing? I mean, right now we know interest rates are starting to come down. Is it the right time? And, there's all the discussion going on at the Fed and what's Trump gonna do and blah, 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 blah.
May I step up front and
Sure.
ask if we fast forward on the screen to slide 3 of the presentation? And you guys have hard copies too, it's hard to read. Go down. One page before that.
Okay. Well, now,
That's perfect. So these are the 2 bond issues that are currently outstanding. As we said, they were sold in 16 and 18. And when they were originally issued, the face value or par amount of the first one was 56,405,000. Obviously, time has passed, we've made payments every year to bring that down. So right now there's 44,330,000 outstanding. The 18 bonds were the balance getting up to the full voter authorization on those 31,190. You've made payments and it's down to 9 million. A lot of people would ask me, well, wait a minute, those were earlier and not much has been paid off. These were later and they're smaller and a ton of them have been paid off. How did that work? When we sold the bonds, think about it, any loan, the longer a loan is outstanding, usually the higher the borrowing cost, right? Investors are gonna wanna get more return if they're loaning money for longer. So when we sold the first bonds, we knew where rates were gonna be, but we wouldn't know where the rates were gonna be on these bonds issued later. So we intentionally, and rates were super low, as Dave mentioned earlier, we intentionally made these bonds a longer duration. Right, the full 20 years, we had more bonds at the back end because rates were so low. So when we came back and sold the remainder of it, we were able to fill in the shorter years, because rates went up a little bit between 16 and 18, but because we sold a shorter term debt, the rates were actually lower than you would have been if you sold it longer. So that's why this one's considered backdated, because rates were low, and this one was front-weighted. All in all, the whole picture balanced out to get to be where we are today. The other thing is when you sell municipal bonds, investors are loaning you millions of dollars. And think of like Allstate or State Farm or a lot of the big insurance companies, they're big buyers of bonds because they would like to earn something on the premiums that we all pay. But they need to be able, if a hurricane rolls through or a fire or something bad happens, they need to be able to have an investment that they can sell, raise revenue, and pay claims. Municipal bonds are great for that because they're very secure. And because of firms like ourselves, they're traded every single day. So if Allstate does come in and buys your bonds and a hurricane comes through Florida, they can sell them through a firm like ourselves to other investors and have the proceeds they need to pay the debt. That's one reason you're like, who in their right mind loans money to people for 4% for 20 years? It's companies like that. They want to make sure that they get some return. They're able to get the money out when they need to. But they also don't want to give you money and then, 1 year later say, all right, well, we didn't do the projects, or a benefactor came in and gave us $40 million, so we're giving the money back. They want to have some idea of long-term planning for their own investment portfolio. So in the municipal bond industry, there's a rule of thumb that for the first 10 years of any bond issue, they're called this non-callable. You're not allowed to pay it off in advance. And that gives investors some solace. You can always negotiate that shorter if you wanted to, but if you would negotiate it shorter, investors don't like it as much. Whenever you're doing something that they don't like, they're going to ask for more of a return. So the standard call date for municipal bonds in the industry is 10 years. And you'll notice these bonds were sold in 16. The call date is 2026. And the call dates are always going to be on interest or principal payments. That's why it's June 1 of this year. The reason that matters is because let's say in the old days, we had, or 5 years ago, we wouldn't have been, 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act took away our ability to advance for fund on taxes and basis. I'm getting into the weeds in my own brain, I apologize. If you had refunded this debt 3 years ago, you'd legally been allowed to. Essentially what you do is you have the old bonds outstanding, you take out a new loan, a new bond, and the proceeds from that new bond would pay off the first bond. But remember, we promised investors we wouldn't give them any money back until June of 2026. So if you do it years in advance, you have to put that money in an escrow, you park it in a bank, and you hopefully earn something on it. But invariably, you're investing that escrow at a rate that's lower than what you're borrowing at, so it's negative arbitrage. You're losing money. So when you do things in advance of the call date, it could be inefficient. Whereas if you can do it right at the call date, your escrow, you're gonna have the first loan outstanding, the second one comes out, and they're gonna be very short time period in between the two. So you're not gonna have a lot of negative arbitrage. In some instances, last year, we were actually making positive arbitrage because short-term rates were actually a little bit higher than longer rates, which was unique. Do you have a question, sir? Okay. So that's why we came out and talked to Concy and Amy 6 months ago and said, hey, this is coming up. And if the market cooperates and interest rates are low enough, there could be an opportunity to save taxpayers money in the future, i.e. take out a new loan at a lower borrowing cost, use those proceeds to pay off the first one and it's gone, and then taxpayers would pay the new loan going forward at a reduced rate. That is a bond refinancing in a nutshell. And that's why we didn't do it before. And that's why now is an opportune time because we're at the call date and rates are low enough to make it work.
So there's no advantage to going beyond the call date?
There are districts that have done that, and well, what if rates could be lower? We'll save you more money. You're taking a gamble on what rates could do.
Yeah.
And number two, every day you go past the call date, that's 1 day's worth of interest that you have to pay. You have the opportunity to save money on it, but once you earn it or investors earn it, you gotta pay them. So anything past the call date is a little less efficient. Again, there are districts that I've been working with where their call dates have already passed and we haven't been able to refinance the bonds because rates weren't low enough to make it work. A good example, Spokane School District, we're working with them right now. They have an issue that they issued in 2012, a really low bond rate in 2012. And the bonds only went out through 2020, 2006, I think. And the call date was 2022, so it was only 4 years after the call date. Remember, whatever money you borrow, you gotta pay the money back. The only thing you really have savings on is the interest. So 4 years of interest versus your 9 years of interest, there's more opportunity to save money with your bonds because they're outstanding longer than the Spokane bonds was for sure. Which goes back to why do people issue 20-year debt or 15-year debt? It all fits in, it all comes into this big puzzle piece that comes together. We did look at the 2018 bonds, and as you would expect, because its call date isn't until 2028, and there's not as much outstanding, so there's not as much interest, right now, it doesn't make any sense to refinance it. Technically, it's illegal because in Washington, for voter approved municipal bonds, you're required to not only save money, but we're required to save money on an annual basis. So that means that if you got, did I put that in there? I don't know if I did. Oh, yeah, if you can go one more slide forward. Let's do one more. I was set there. Yeah, here we go. So this is a program that we use that calculates what the existing debt service is on the bonds that are outstanding. So these are the 2016 bonds, and they have June, December interest payments, and every December they have a principal payment. This column here, the refunding debt service, is the debt service projection from what Ansley and I have put together what we think they might be able to accomplish with a new refunding bond issue. And the green box column are the savings. And you'll notice that, yeah, there's $2.9 million in total savings, but every single year, it's about the same amount of savings because we have to satisfy state law and have annual savings every single year. And typically what we try and do is, though they back up, you're also not allowed to change the term of the bond. So the voters originally said you could have 20 years to issue the debt, or 22 or whatever, and you issued it in 20 years. With your mortgage, right, if it was a 20-year loan, you paid off 10, you can refinance and stretch it back out to 20. We can't do that in Washington because essentially what you'd be doing is you'd be kicking the can down the road and extending the life of the debt. Oregon, they can do it. Oregon, they can do a lot of different things. But here, we're legally required to make sure we have positive annual savings and we cannot extend.
So the 2.9, that's a fairly conservative, you said, if we can convince the rating agencies to pump us up a little bit and maybe a little more. Maybe.
If everything goes well, and remember, I fight over 1/100%.
Yeah, right.
So in my mind, if I can pick up an extra $10,000,
Right.
I'm like, woohoo! Not everybody shares that with me. I would love to be looking back and say, we saved over $3 million. It just sounds nice.
Yeah.
But ultimately what will happen, and I have a schedule in here, we're gonna pull all the documentation together with Amy and Tom's help, get to a date. Why am I blanking on that? I should maybe go to the last page of the presentation. But I can go over to that really quick. This is a schedule of events that Amy was nice enough to agree to, because this is the tax for life. We're gonna pull everything together, and on March 11th, early in the morning, we might adjust that, and it all depends on market conditions. We will go out to investors and say, hey, investors, we think this is a fair structure. This is a structure that we need to save the district money, and we think this is a fair level of interest rates that you should be interested in. And over a 2-hour, hour-and-a-half period, we negotiate back and forth. So we put out our initial offer, and the week prior to that, our salespeople all across the country are reaching out to folks that we know buy school bonds or are interested in Washington bonds or new market. We solicit orders from them, and they either say, yeah, I like the whatever maturity they're interested in. Because remember, a bond is not one big number, it's a whole bunch of little numbers put together over time. They will put in orders and they will ask for so much of it. Or they'll say, well, that's great, but there's another thing down the street that I'm looking at, because every single week, a slow week in the bond market is $8 billion. That's the average. Average is probably closer to $9 billion every single week was sold. So part of our job is to make sure that people are interested in and want to purchase your bonds. Some of them might say, no, I'm looking at something else, or I don't have funds right now, so I'm not going to be interested. If you raise the yields of borrowing costs, maybe we come back. Or others are like, oh my gosh, it's a great deal. I'd be willing to buy it for less. Over that 1.5 to 2 hour period, we are trying to pull together ultimately enough individuals to buy at least one bond for every maturity. All of the bonds that we're selling, you might get at least one order. If at the end of that order period, we have more orders than we need, we will consider counter offering, saying, well, you know, we have so many people, we're gonna lower yields. It's on us. As soon as we make a different counter offer, everybody gets the right to back away.
And I was reading kind of, that in general, last year, there was kind of an oversupply of municipal bonds, and that's kind of going, so supply's going down, demand's going up, that's good for us.
So knock on wood,
Yeah.
the stuff that we heard this Monday at our national call is they're starting to project that this year could be big again.
Yeah,
So it's all, if I had a crystal ball
Right.
that was accurate, I would be doing really, really well. But I'm still here just working and you do our best. And again, that's one reason why I try to be conservative is because if you get an X or a tweet, whatever you want to call it, on Saturday night saying that we're going to bomb something, by Monday morning, the market can change
yeah,
quite a bit.
right,
This weekend, people shrugged it off. But if we invade Cuba, that could have actually really good implications for the bond market, because people will be freaked out, and instead of investing in the stock market, they're gonna move all their money to municipal bonds because they're secure.
Yeah.
Or if the war in Ukraine magically ended, people are like, oh, my gosh, the world's getting better, and so they pull money out of municipal bonds and put it into equities because they feel more secure, and so that raises them. So it all depends. It's amazing how many little different things will go into this multi-trillion dollar bond market. But I'm getting off into the weeds, so I apologize that I'm going into too much detail. Definitely bring me in, I can talk more.
okay, and our CFO is recommending we do this.
Yes, so we will be bringing to the January 27th board meeting, 2 resolutions. One is the state bond guarantee program resolution, and I will give you, these are very legalese resolutions, so I'm giving you that warning now. They're lengthy, and they're written by our bond counsel. Bond counsel will be in attendance, so if there are questions, they can answer questions. And then the second one is
The delegation.
the delegation authority to allow Dr. Pedroza and I to proceed, and be able to sign the legal documents and everything that needs to be done in order to do this bond refunding, so.
Okay,
I think there was a question.
Mr. Swanson, I just want to ask you, how does your fee structure work for your entity?
Good question. So we are not paid ever until a bond issue actually closes. So if we wound up working with you for 14 years, good old Pioneer School District, it was lucky number 14, they finally passed bonds. And we got paid once the bonds were issued, sold, and closed. The way our fee is paid is that we will actually purchase, on the day of that bond sale, we will purchase all of the bonds from you and then sell them to investors. And the differential in that price is how we get paid. And I will work with that price with Amy. I will give her comparable transactions of other things that have happened in Washington State. Washington State is actually a little bit cheaper than the national average, so we don't really do national because there are other parts of the country that charge a lot more. But I'll give you comparative other school district issues that have happened in our state, let you know what folks have been paying, and then I will make a proposal, and if she is amenable, if she thinks that's fair, then we will move forward. If not, we will have more discussion. Again, our goal is to provide the service. Ultimately, if we do a good job for you, as we did in 16 and 18, the hope is that we maintain the lines of communication and are able to continue to work with you going forward.
And I would like to point out that these proceeds that we pay, both the underwriter and our bond counsel, are paid out of our debt service fund. So it does not come out of our general fund, so it's not a hit out of our general fund. So it's all a part of our closing costs that are embedded within the debt service fund itself. So I just want to let you know.
And this 2.912 million number that's listed right here, the projected savings, that's inclusive of all costs of issuance. Our fee, bond counsel's fee, the rating agency fee, we will bring in, because our math is pretty good, but bond counsels, because they want to make sure that we do it right, we hire a third party to do a verification of the math. Because when you do this kind of stuff, you cannot make a mistake. So even though it seems somewhat redundant sometimes, we ask the third party to do that. There's another fee I'm forgetting.
Refunding trustee, you think?
Yes, right. So we are gonna have that, as much as we trust you, if instead of giving you all the proceeds of the bond sale, we're gonna put it into an account with US Bank, who acts as the registrar for the state of Washington. They will hold the funds and they will make sure they get distributed to ultimately the end owners of the bonds. So There's about 6 or 7 various cost of issuances. The one cost of issuance that would have to be paid, whether or not the bond's closed or not, all those fees we have to wait for closing. But the rating agencies, for whatever reason, they feel like they did their work and they need to get paid. So as soon as we have that call with the rating agencies, we're gonna be on the hook for that fee. That's why we're hopefully gonna set a savings threshold that is worth Amy's time and the board to consider, and then be well above that before we move forward. In my 28-year career, I've had 3 times where we set a savings threshold to target for like a minimum amount that it's worth doing. And by the time we got there, the market had moved away from us, we weren't able to do it. Methow Valley is the one that I remember, because it took us 2.5 years before we actually got it done. It did get done, but it took a long time.
Do you know when Moody's last evaluated us and gave us this particular rating?
Amy, how much fun did you have last year? That was February of last year?
Last year,
So it's been a while.
That's
That's
right.
not even a year.
Yeah,
Well, but I mean, our financials are quite different.
Oh, yes.
Now than when they were a year
They
ago.
are much.
Yeah,
and I'll come right back to you, but I will say, you're in good company with the downgrades. There are no districts any longer that have a AAA rating. Issaquah, Lake Washington, and Bellevue, no. Yeah, Bellevue still have a AA1, which is one notch below the lowest. There are, I'm going from memory because I did a report in December, there are 58 school districts that are still in that second highest category, the AA, and there's another 68 that are below. 5 years ago, 6 years ago, the average for all Washington schools was in that AA category. You have a question, sir?
Amy, we will see a breakout as far as fees and things of that nature.
Yeah, we'll have an estimate of those fees and then we'll get a final closing cost document as well.
So we can see all those numbers.
Absolutely. No, we're required to do that. So we will have it, actually, it's gonna be in the data pricing, Ansley will help me. And we're gonna have a full set of numbers that bond council will rely on to fill out all the tax documentation and the legal documentation. And we actually have the conservations broken out on 2 different pages, because we wanna make sure that they're right. Yeah. And the refunding, the verification agent fee and the rating fee, those are all standard formulas that are, so Moody's just came out with their 2026 schedule. So everyone in the country is charged the same, depending on how many bonds they issue. So those fees are set. Our fee is the only one that is really negotiated, because if the world changes between now and the pricing date, then the amount of work we would have to put in some of the bonds to try is what would ultimately determine how much we were asked to be paid. Does that make sense? Okay.
any other questions anybody have?
I will say I
So this
made,
will be coming back to us for approval in
January
January,
27th.
next meeting.
and I will say that those 2 resolutions, the school bond guarantee, we have to ask the state permission to participate. And that program is only eligible or open to school districts that have voted that. And again, we really appreciate that, because the state backstops, and for $100 processing fee, you get that AAA rating. And the difference between AAA and even is 8 notches, and that's going to be, 25 to 50, a quarter to 0.5% in borrowing cost at a minimum. So for $100, it is well worth its weight in gold. The other resolution is a delegation. The board has to approve all actions taken by the district. The intent of that resolution is that you will set parameters for us to live within. The most important one is what is the minimum savings threshold that we have to achieve if we're going to move forward. Those parameters that Amy, Conti, and myself will have to live within, bond council will have to live within, and make sure we exceed those. If we go forward with the transaction. I have asked bond council to input a minimum savings percent of 1% based off the refunded value of the bonds that are being called. The reason I'm setting that low is because we are at the call date. Because once you're past the call date, you're kind of losing that opportunity to set a threshold that is low enough that we think we can achieve it, but isn't so low that it isn't worth Amy's time. The percent savings, can we go back? I apologize. Can we go back, go back up? One more thing. Oh, go.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's okay. Right there. Right there. So we're expecting or hoping to have about $2.9 million in savings The net present value of that, because money today isn't worth as much as in the future, is only $2.4 million. So we take that 2.4 million and essentially divide it into the base value of the bonds that we're funding. And that's where we're getting the savings threshold right now, or estimated savings percent of about 5.6%. So if we set a savings threshold of 1%, we are very, very likely going to achieve that goal. You can always set something higher, but remember, if you set something higher and then we can't achieve it, then we can't do the financing. And every day we pass the call date is one less day of possible earnings. So again, that delegation resolution gives us the permission to move forward and actually make it happen. And it's whatever Amy thinks her time is worth to get this accomplished is what I would recommend.
Okay. There's no other questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you all for listening. Appreciate it.
I'm gonna move to the next agenda item, future plan, roll update, equity and empathy with. Director Ruppert?
Yes. Okay, this, as Director Larson said, this is a report showing our mid-year progress toward the goals that are related to our fourth of 4 goals in our strategic plan: equity, empathy, and anti-racism. So I use the same template as I used for the previous reports to show each of the goals that are within strategic plan goal 4, and then what were the goal itself, what were the metrics we used to measure our progress, and the outcomes, where are we at this point, to where, how much progress have we made so far. So just going down on goal 1, student belonging and identity, you'll see that our students staff know students realize that they were known and cared for. The metrics, we were using the tool of the educational effectiveness survey, and the goal is to improve by at least 5% based on the scholars rating positively in a compilation of all the indicators that were related to belonging and identity. So this is, since we're mid-year, we don't have end-of-year data for that yet, but then my next report to be presented after the end of the school year, we will have data for that. That next survey would be conducted in the spring. Goal 2.
So, the survey, are you talking about the CDE survey done this year?
Yeah, we're looking
Okay.
at, yes, whether that's the ones we're looking at and possibly replacing. So that's still up in the air right now. We haven't made a firm decision on whether that would be the same one, whether that same company.
We're using Thought Exchange this year. For survey data, yeah.
Because like I said, we're getting into comparing apples and oranges. If,
Yes.
the CDE data, so this is a company, I don't remember what CDE that has provided 3 surveys to us, one to students, one to staff, and one to families. And their questions are quite extensive, and they're based on, what's successful schools and successful school districts. So they're based on some evidence of what should be looked for. And I guess my concern is if we're going to switch to a different survey tool, what is that based on, and what are the questions?
Mm-hmm.
And is it going to cover all 3? I mean, there's a idea to move to Thought Exchange, but there's kind of lack of details. So I'm not sure. I mean, if you switch surveys, then all of a sudden, you change the measure, and then you're back to establishing a new baseline, and then you can't really have a percentage improving because you don't have a baseline
Right.
to go.
That is, yeah, I thought there's definitely a consideration anytime you change a tool. you reestablish and start over as far as showing growth. But the tool, go ahead, you want to add something?
I can offer a little insight into that. So what the plan is for thought exchanges to build and expand from the current CEE survey that we have. So what we'll do is use the survey that we have been using as a baseline and then expand from it. So then we're able to kind of have that longitudinal data that we're able to pull regardless of the survey provider that we.
Okay, when you say expand, you mean use all, I mean, part of the issue with the CE was that there was tons and tons of questions.
Mhm.
So you're saying we use all those questions?
So we'll use some of those questions. So
Oh, okay.
we'll be able to select. So the Thought Exchange company is actually supporting us with that.
Okay.
So we sent to them the previous survey that we'll have.
Oh, okay.
They'll pull out the ones that matter the most and is aligned with our data, and then we'll expand.
Okay, yeah, that's helpful. So we're not gonna just completely start from scratch. We'll be using, yeah, okay.
And the reason why we went to thought exchange is our participation rate for our scholars and families, well, specifically for our families. We weren't getting the participation rate for our families because of the language barriers, and CE was English only. And Thought Exchange had up to 100 languages translated already automatically through the process. So it was one of the reasons why we made the shift. And you're right, the questions were 157 per person. Per group. That was, we were getting feedback. Oh, well, let me say, I did not want to take this with you. I really did not. I don't like surveys anymore.
Okay, so it's good to know that we're not just, totally doing it from scratch, we're taking and basing it on some things that we think are good things to measure, that have some research behind them, and then, molding it a little bit, okay.
Right. And then goal 2 is participation in advanced or highly capable programs in coursework. Our metric was to specifically to our target scholar group, students identify Hispanic, Latino, or Black, African American, was to increase their enrollment by 5%. And I included a link then for, this is information that was shared. It sounds familiar. It was shared on December 9th, our last school board meeting. The details of enrollment. Their goal, participation of staff in anti-racist work. Our specific metric on this was participation in equity and anti-racism professional learning. And one of the main ones was our beginning of year kickoff that was for all employees of the district in August to an anti-racist summit. We had guest speakers who were nationally recognized for expertise in this area. And so we did have, our goal was, Union High, 100%. And in between, other than those who may go out absent sick that day, everybody else who was on duty did participate. So we showed 255 educators participating in these other 3 professional learning offerings, which have taken place. So multi-session topics, and they've been, some of their optional features can sign up for, and some are happening on the district directed days. So all educators in schools are participating. And we have, even with the mid-year report, I added the final bullet to show that there are still, some of this information is based on multi-session trainings some sessions are occurring after the day of this report. The 4th goal of WIDA scores, that is about our, it's called world-class instructional design assessments for English language. And so this is percent of scholars exiting the multilingual learner ML program. So that's once students have been assessed to be at a fluent enough rate that they don't need to be in a specific program, then they're considered having exited the program. Doesn't mean they don't get support, but they don't have to have that specific program. And since this is another one that's end of year data, we will have that report at that time once that data is available. But right now we don't have yet. Pilot number 5, strengthen racial equity leads. Director Roberto, do you want to address that? If you're the goal number 5 for the racial equity leads and work you're doing.
Yes, so it is built, and expanded from the 24-25 initiative, that we kind of reintroduce and reimagine what race and equity looks like in our district. So with that, we, include monthly meetings as well as external training earlier. And then also we have, a number of educators who participate in what is called Reimagining Education Summer Institute, which is at Teachers College, Columbia University. And what is required is when educators participate in professional development, that is brought back to the group so that the group can also learn from it as well. If you could scroll down a little bit, please. Thank you. So in addition to that expansion, we have also reconvened the executive, superintendent's executive risk and equity committee this year, which includes myself, Dr. Pedroza, Director Mon, a school leader, and our 2 student representatives, as well as our 2 district race and equity leads. The purpose of this is to draw through line between the work that we're doing at the district level down all the way to our school levels and the work that they're doing on building-based race and equity teams. So the purpose of this is to really engage in alignment, ensure that we are systematizing all of the work that we're doing in our system. And then finally, we have identified, want to do race and equity leads for the school base. And our district leads are the ones who kind of do them on a bi-monthly basis, as well as identify professional development opportunities and provide those supports that they need to be able to implement it at the building.
And then goal 6, amplifying scholar voice. The metrics here are related to providing more opportunities for students to actually have authentic participation and input to our decision-making processes, including how we may modify board policies and procedures based on this. So the outcomes column you see by our 4 bullets, and these are the main ways that we're getting ensuring that we have engaging with students, both receiving information and also sharing with them, and they're also being communicators with their peers at schools. So we have our 2 high school scholars on our board. We have the students who participate on the superintendent student advisory board. We have scholars who identify key focus areas, including these that are mentioned here: belonging, inclusion, teacher empathy, scholar voice, representation, and creative outlets. And then based on the 24-25 engagement, connecting scholars, sharing feedback, and presenting year-end report. And is that something that, Director Burley, is there anything you want to add to that one?
No, I think just a lot of rhetoric that we got back from our educators, from the all staff to call, that was just very powerful to have scholars in front of them reporting what they really worked on last year, as well as the action items that they expect to see. So I even have met with a couple of our school-based race and equity teams where a lot of their work is guided from that yearly report. So that just kind of takes how powerful scholar voice is and how we're really trying to work on uplifting and empowering.
Yeah, so I'd like to see kind of a report to the board, maybe quarterly or something about what. So there's the student report into specific things in there. So I'd like to hear, what's going on in those particular areas. When I was looking through them, some of them, I think there's things going on, some of them I don't know, some of them maybe not. It would be helpful to get that feedback loop. Because we also need feedback loop to the students. I mean, the students provide us input all the time, and then the question is, how do they know we're actually doing something about it, which typically is what we miss on them. So it sounds like they're doing some things themselves, which is great. So it'd just be good to hear what's going on.
Yeah, we are proposing to put this on the agenda for the February meeting. So that's on the proposal. So I'll just make sure Deb has that for agenda setting, so that they can present to you what the work they're doing. And then I will say that the students at the end of the year, they do a recap of some, conversations, but maybe we can be more systemic in bringing in that loop. What we do, what we've done in the past is the students, after they do the recap in June, then they draft, this is the first time they've actually drafted a big comprehensive report like this. This is only like year 2. We're starting year 2.
Year 3.
We're starting year 3 on this. So last year was the first year they did a report. The students did a report. And so what we did in the fall, this last fall, is we actually had them present to the entire Tukwila School District staff in August. What they were making recommendations for the year. And then the last thing I will say is I also asked every school leader, and I'm looking at the school leaders, I asked all the school leaders to take the report that the students did and incorporate them into their building leadership team structures to talk about the student reports from the standard, because a lot of it is actions in schools, right? So a lot of it was more based on what can we do in our schools. So those are the steps we took because we got the report last June. So they presented in August to all staff. School leaders took the report, took it to their building leadership team, but I think it's good timing to bring it back to this board to just kind of hear where we are.
Councilperson Larson, I'd just like to ask, what's a common thing that the students are coming back to us with? I mean, I know that's a broad question, but what type of issues are high school students having versus our junior high versus grade school?
I would say social emotional learning and mental health is very much something. So we have them listed here, the topics that they really wanted to focus on. We actually have fifth graders in there too, which is, I love the diverseness of their feedback, but yeah, social emotional learning and mental health is very much something.
So here's the report that they gave. I don't know if you guys, we should probably send a copy to you guys. Maybe we could send a
I
copy.
can put it to.
Yeah, everybody.
Everybody.
Because they're very specific.
Yeah, I wasn't looking for a deep dive, I was just looking for maybe kind of, top.
Safety was a big one too, so social emotional learning, but included in that is
Teacher relationships.
emotional safety, cyber safety, physical safety, and then, and then the last piece was teacher relationships, rigor. They really are big proponents of more rigorous learning. Anyway, so I'll get the report to all of them before they come and present in February.
Yeah, it's not long. It's pretty easy to digest. But I mean, they're just, yeah. They'll send it to.
Thank you.
Dave, can I take a?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I was just so thankful that they did that. It was so great, such a great opportunity.
Yes.
They have emerged when we originally developed the concept. They have emerged now as they now plan it, they facilitate, they help us with recruitment. They really are the leaders of the students, are the leaders of the meeting. So it's pretty incredible.
Well,
And our seventh, bullet here, leadership equity PD. This is the metric here is offering continuous equity focused PD for all district leaders, and it's promoting inclusive anti-racist leadership practices. A couple of examples I included here. Even today as an example, we had our monthly school administrators meeting, and the training was focused on looking at their school improvement plans and going through each of the goals and sharing them in triads on where are they, what's the progress so far, and what was their target group. District-wide, we were really looking at students who identify as Latinx, Hispanic, and Black African American. And a lot of our school leaders identified the trends they were having, maybe students who were overrepresented for exclusionary discipline. And they talked about what would be the plan in their plan, but also talking to staff so that they even that out, reduce the disproportionality or eliminate the disproportionality. And the next one listed here is an example. We are having all schools this year participating in the instructional round process. But some people call it like a learning walk or school visit. Some of the directors have participated in a number of those. And we'll have opportunity for directors, board directors to participate if you're able. It's great to have your participation in that. basically our focus this year, each school has determined 2 or 3 priority instructional strategies or teacher moves that are particular to language development. And that's been our focus of multi-pronged training this year for teachers and principals. So that as we visit the schools, those are the things that we're having specific look for, rather than just look at everything, look for those specific strategies that our teachers and principals have been focusing on and giving some feedback based on the rounds. So yeah, board members, it'd be great if you were able to participate this year. We have one coming up, February 2nd. We just determined that this morning. That's gonna be a tough rollout. And so that is it. Oh, and then the final page is the appendix. I just wanted to show some detail about the committee specific that focuses on racial equity and anti-racism. So there's 5 goals to show specifically the highest participation training we've done so far this year and continuing to do.
Okay.
Josh, can I ask a quick question? I guess in my mind, again, I'm just looking for top level here, that I would think that, when a student maybe acts out in class or something like that, that the teacher is just doing the right thing and trying to, correct their behavior. Are we finding in the Tukwila School District that teachers are maybe selecting that discipline on the basis of race? And
great question. The focus is to ensure that it's not based on race.
of course,
Yeah, but we're hoping that we're looking at that to see if that does give us trends or specific students possibly, or groups of students. And from that, tells us, it doesn't tell us why, it just tells us where there might be overrepresentation. Then that the school staff go back and look at, start analyzing the root cause of why. And if they determine that, then that's where they make the plan, what are they gonna do about it to reduce that over referrals for discipline.
And sometimes it's not based on race. We just did a data analysis today, and I will just share sharing that one of our leaders identified that, for example, the majority of discipline referrals were boys, and specifically boys in special education. So that's what the data kind of gives us some look at that. And if the majority is in that, then what do we do about that, right? How do we work with our special education teachers or case managers, or is there something that's happening in the boys, in these particular boys' IEPs? Can we address that there? Or, so that just gives us data so that then we can probe more deeper. And so how do we actually support this? Do we need to do training in the classroom? It just gives us this list of things that we can then start exploring.
yeah, I just want to make sure that teachers aren't becoming uncomfortable and disciplining students that are acting out in class.
When we do, district-wide have a focus, been for at least a few years, the term restorative practices. And basically that's using it, maybe act outs as a way to get to know the student better, what is causing it. And sometimes it's environmentals, something that a lot of times they liked, they noticed or they loved at school. And you can address, if they're not, then we change our practice to make sure they're feeling more included and acknowledge that sometimes that does reduce the frustration that leads to behaviors. So the restorative part of it is to not use discipline as a way to get even. That is not benefiting anybody. The point is to say, here's what happened, kind of reteaching expectations, assuring confidence in the student, and assuring them that we are, and them, their parents, that we are with them to help them do the best they can. We know they're capable, and we'll just help them get there. So when they come back in, if they were out of school for a while, coming back in, the restorative part is to make sure they feel welcomed again and no holdover of negative assumptions.
Thank you for the explanation.
Thank you. Now move on to school improvement plan and children middle school. That's what we. I don't know, how do you want to just run through it, or how do you want to do it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe, can I just give some advice? Yeah. Maybe after like every 4 slides or something, because there's a number of slides, you just pause and ask questions because it's a lot of information. And you're gonna unpack, is that okay? That's okay, and you actually have a lot of time too, so, yeah.
Well, how much time do we actually have?
Well, we actually, I mean, we're going through things a little faster, so, you actually have about now an hour or so, yeah, so good for you.
We will fast forward. and-
No, the board meeting ends, I think at 6 o'clock, so I'm sure the board will love to end a little early, but I'm just letting you know you have time to go through it and take your questions. I think it's important.
Yep.
Because it's the first time the board's listening to a school improvement presentation. Before it was a graduation high school presentation, but want to make sure that they have the time to really dig deep. It's the first time, so, yeah.
Yep.
But I would just pause after a little bit, but to pause and ask questions, yeah.
So hi, everyone, good evening. I am Suzanne Rieger, proud principal of Showalter Middle School, and
One more time, my name is Cynthia Perez, and I am the assistant principal at Showalter Middle School. And thank you so much, everyone, and we're really excited to be able to present about our building.
okay, we'll start here. I am gonna give a little narrative about our photos, because something that is embedded in our work this year, is our school culture and how our students feel, about being at Showalter Middle School. And part of that is how our staff feels about being at Showalter. So since we have time, I'm gonna narrate our, photos, because I also think that's the fun side of some of this. So that is Showalter, staff at the opening kickoff in August, and, it's a small picture, but, the charge was to dress in your purple and gold, just everyone who was there saw us in the audience, but that is very important to our transformative work we are doing at Showalter Middle School this year and beyond. Thank you, Ellen. So here are our 4 goals for this evening. We will update you with progress towards how did we do, particularly in our reading and math staples for last school year. Majority of this presentation, because there will be the question, okay, so you met that goal or you did not, what are you doing this year? Principal Rieger, so we want to share that with you. What were some areas of growth, opportunities, and then threats and challenges that Showalter Middle School wants to present to you that may give some narrative around why we're meeting or not meeting our goals, the next steps in math and reading, and then of course highlights and celebrations, some of the work that is currently happening this school year at Showalter. Okay, so here's our math data, and I do believe everybody has seen this presentation. So if you are very excited for me to narrate every slide, sorry. But so to summarize our math goals, last year our SIP, we had an overall goal for our scholars. And this is particularly on our iReady assessment, meaning what we call stretch growth. Refresher for everyone. Stretch growth, we look at two measures on iReady. We look at typical growth and stretch growth. Typical growth is what you would make in 1 year, but because we have scholars who are 2-3 years below grade level proficiency, we look at the stretch, and the stretch is the score we look at that identifies these scholars would be on the trajectory towards making grade level proficiency. So we set our goals around that stretch growth. So these are our goals in math, and we looked at our diagnostic in 2025. So we did then tease out by grade level. So I'll let you take a look. We had our goal around MLL scholars.
What does SIP stand for?
Oh, I apologize. That is the SIP, the School Improvement Plan. And as you go through this table, the data is in table. The next one is just in graph form, so you can see how did the whole
grade, look on, stretch growth at the end of last year. So stretch goal was more than 1 year's growth, correct?
Yeah.
This right, summarize it.
Yes.
Yes.
So percent progress is what, how close did they get to meeting their stretch goal?
Could you just slide back one slide? What I included on our data is we did have, okay, are these scholars meeting this stretch growth? But I also included the data point of had improved placement as well. So as you're scrolling through, there's a slide that has some colored bars, and that's the whole school. So when we're looking at the whole school, if we're looking at those colors, did we move kids from dark red to the pink, to the yellow, to the green? So I did want to include that we, within that growth measure, we are seeing, some positive, growth within those levels.
So that's basically how close are they getting to, grade level or above grade level?
To grade level proficiency.
Yeah, and what we know, we've been using the IRB data, and what we know are students who are 3 or more grade levels below, they have a lot more to grow to grade level proficiency. So we do want to keep our eye on that data point. Like, they may have not met stretch growth, but are they moving?
And I guess I just want to say, a couple of years ago, we kind of switched these goals to growth goals. And the reason for, as opposed to say proficiency goals, in other words, are they at grade level or are they not at grade level? We have many students that are below grade level. And if you focus on growth, are they growing? And there's lots of, I was going to mention an article about this also, but if we focus on growth, if students are growing, they will get to proficiency. So if they're hitting their stretch growth, they're going to get to proficiency. And it also provides a much quicker feedback is what we're doing working. Okay, if you wait for them to say if they're 2 or 3 grade levels behind, are they proficient? Well, it may take 2 or 3 years to get there, and we'll never know. But if they're growing, if we're monitoring growth, then you can much more quickly determine is what we're doing working. And so that's why we focus on, when more focus on growth as opposed to proficiency.
That's exactly, and that's, we don't want it, say for example, we had an 8th grader that started out the year at a 3rd grade level. It's really not reasonable for us to say, hey, in the springtime, they're going to be working at an 8th grade level. And nor do we want that student to get discouraged. However, by doing the iReady the 3 times during the year, a really important part that we do with our scholars is actually looking at their own growth. And it's such an incredible skill because they're able to see where they've grown. They're able to see what they're doing. And they're able to say, hey, you know what? Some of the growth is incredible. I had 182% growth. If you're 12 and you see that, you've got hope, which is incredible. As to if you are not seeing those numbers, gosh, I'm still only at a 4th grade level. No, you went from 2nd grade to 4th grade. You're doing it. And so that's where it's also really important for us to look at it.
And I was going to say, there's just an article in the New York Times about Mississippi, which Mississippi has traditionally been one of the lowest performing in terms of proficiency, but they've recently turned it around and they are moving up quickly. This is particularly with regard to reading, and the same kind of logic applies to math. But what the New York Times found, so what is Mississippi doing to get this growth? And there was 4 things, and as with always in education, it's not one thing. There's not one silver bullet, but there's multiple things. So, this is reading, and we'll talk about reading, but one of them is move to the science of reading, the phonics, and we're already moving on that one. The second one is measuring student growth, which is exactly what you just said, and the reason why we do that. And then quality curriculum, and that's one we'll be talking about. I noticed we still need a little work on that. And then the other one was literary coaches, which we'll also see in here. So those are the 4 things, and I think we're doing all of them. We haven't quite got there on all of them, but we're moving in that same direction. So I thought that was really good as a validation for what you guys are doing.
And I'll just add one more thing is that we're focusing on tier instruction, meaning not just on interventions, but on all levels of the classroom. So making sure that the students in all their classes, whether it's the algebra class, the social studies class, or if they're in an intervention class, that the focus is on language development, on content, and making sure that they're exposed to general education curriculum, which I think is critical.
So our data is in there. We can kind of cruise, through. And if you have questions about, our data, because I do want to spend some time talking about, it sounds like we have a formula that Mississippi has. Or maybe they have our formula. Yeah. There we go. We've been doing it. One thing about iReady too, when we're thinking about growth too, why it's important to talk about the scholars moving through in reading in particular, you will hear this tonight. We're looking at 5 domains in reading as well. And I did not include this in the report, but it's important to share because many of you know this, but I have been at Showalter for quite some time, as a reading, specialist, we'll call me. But, we are seeing, like, in the domain of phonemic awareness and phonics, we are seeing significant, shrinking in those levels. So to the science of reading and rethinking what the tier 1 instruction looks like, particularly in language art. So that is a celebration. I didn't include it, but you will hear tonight about why we've selected to really look at vocabulary inside of reading in response to supporting our MLL scholars and also supporting our readers across the board. Because another data point that we're keeping our eye on is reading informational text. And why that is important is our scholars are reading informational text across all content areas. So a lot of our plans you'll hear about tonight are really data informed around vocabulary, around the science of reading. So I just want to set up.
Yeah, I think informational reading is also critical on math because we know that the math has gotten much more to word problems
And science
that
as
kind of
well.
stuff. So-
Yeah. And we're really excited. So Ellen, if we could go to slide 28, if everyone is okay with my summary of the data.
And actually, one other thing I would add to what Ms. Rieger said is also that Ms. Rieger and I both have the reading background. And what Ms. Rieger has really done this year with the staff is really emphasize that all teachers are teachers of reading. And I think that has definitely been a shift, which we're seeing within our staff and we're seeing within the instruction in the classrooms.
Thank you. So when we think about our tier, our instruction, where we're continuing to make a shift at Showalter is really looking at the tier 1 instruction. That is instruction for all scholars, regardless if you are a scholar with an IEP, regardless if you are a scholar who has an identification of being a multi-language learner. So all of the work you'll hear about tonight is how do we structure our systems, particularly around professional development to grow teacher practice, and what are we doing school-wide to support some of the goals I just talked about and some of the points in the data from last year. So first is last year we did our comprehensive needs assessment in June with our leadership team, and we got into a dialogue about, we know the skill is there for our scholars. We know they can do the math. Is this really representative of what they can do? And then we got into a really in-depth conversation about engagement. And that led to talking about how much real world application is there in our math instruction, in our additional math classes. And also number 2, how much of how much time is being spent on our scholars engaging in talk, particularly in math. So that's setting us up for a goal that we wrote in math this year that you'll see in a little bit. Reading side of the house, vocabulary? What do we know about our MLL learners? What do we know about reading? What do we know about any content that we are going to, engage scholars in? And it's loaded with vocabulary. So we take a deep dive at how do we do it as a school? It's not a reading teacher's job to teach vocabulary. It's not the ELA teacher's job to teach vocabulary. It's all of our job, but we're leveling that up from teaching. We call it vocabulary development. So we've done some pretty cool things with teaching our scholars word development, how words are made up. Not here's your predetermined list and learn the meanings of those and then like do a fill in the blank to show us that you know the meaning of it. It's these are how these parts, this is how our language works, these are how words are made up, these are the parts. And you know, when I was a teacher, I used to say buy one, get 10 free. If I could teach you this tiny little part and you see it on these words in science and these words, and then we level that up again. How are we asking our students to talk across the content areas, particularly with a focus on how are they using these words? We want to hear these words show up in their talk. So that's some of the work we've been doing around vocabulary this year. But we're not done, 5 and 6. So I had the luxury of being a staff member at Showalter as I transitioned into being the principal. So I was a participant in a lot of the professional development as well as a designer and developer of it. I also did principal listen and learning sessions when I received the wonderful news that I was going to be the principal. So I talked to Director Larson. I know you are gonna want a percentage on this. So I'm gonna say I think I got to 97% of the staff that had one-on-one talks with me. So I listened like, what do you need? What do we need more of? What do you always hear? Time, right? Time to do the work. We do some great PD and it sometimes stops there. So how do we get that to the next level implementation? But how do we get that to the next level to bring back the student work, to have the teachers reflect and reflecting on their practice? So the first thing that I implemented this year, early release time that we refer to as principal directed. So that's the professional development time that I plan and engage my staff with. So that is called PLC time, professional learning communities. That acronym snuck in there. I thought I called them all. I apologize. But what I also heard loud and clear in the feedback was we want to work in grade level teams. So historically at Showalter for the last, 5 or so years, we've been working in our content team. So science works together, ethnic studies works together. So I've designed it where 6th grade works together, 7th grade works together, and 8th grade works together. And we've implemented some protocols and procedures, and it's the best way I could summarize it is it's a teaching and learning cycle. So we have a new learning, we design instruction, we implement it, and we come back and we talk across our grade levels to do that work. And I am gonna pause after number 6. And the other thing is, I know you have all heard like, that could have just been an email. Well, that's a lot of staff meetings that I have been at, that could have just been an email. So I have 1 hour, once a month with the staff, Wednesdays after school. Well, I want all of our time, if we're gonna be together, we're gonna collaborate, and I want it focused on instruction. So I found different ways to get information out. I have a school Google Classroom, I update it every week, and then I archive everything. You can go back and see everything for the week. So that's typically a lot of business type stuff that's done at staff meetings. So staff meetings, we are in grade level teams, but they're data. So that's where we're getting, are we looking at data? Yes, we are. Most recently attendance data right before the break. And that's in grade level teams to look at our attendance data, our behavior data, grades of students, and not just admiring a challenge or a problem, but real time coming up, with solutions when we're seeing, some trends in our data. Most recently, in December, we looked at attendance. December is really challenging to absorb anything new for teachers. They may be thinking about winter break. So we had 3 breakout stations, and instead of like, let's get the kids here, we have interventions in place. What are we doing when the kids show up? When they walk into my classroom and they haven't been here for 6 days, what's that experience like? What am I saying? What are our conversations to engage the family? So we had some activities where we sent talking points, we sent emails, we wrote letters and cards to the scholars and to the families around that idea of, we're just glad you're here. So I'm gonna pause. That's a lot, but these are like 6 things we're super committed to and focused on at Showalter this year. And it's only January, and we have all of that going. So I will pause for questions.
So I'm curious, your attendance has been a big issue, obviously, ever since COVID, and particularly at the secondary level. So I'm just curious what you're finding. I mean, and it ties back, it's interesting, you're talking about math and engagements and roles. We're just interviewing our newest student rep, and one thing we asked her was, what do you think some of the biggest issues are? And she said, basically engagement of students. So, and, so I'm tying that in. Are you seeing some improvements in attendance yet, or is it, and it's still pretty early, so?
Yes, I cannot give you right now, like hard numbers, but kind of street data from the attendance secretary where, and she is gonna run it in mid-year for me, where we're seeing a difference. Is in how many students are attending, school starting at 8 o'clock. We had a significant amount of students not arriving on time. So we changed where our homeroom was placed, because when scholars arrived, it was homeroom. And it was kind of well, that's not really a class. So we made a slight shift in our schedule where homeroom is called period 2, not homeroom. So now the schedule lays as 7 periods a day. So I think we're seeing like a shrink in how many students are missing in the morning. And then just again, some street data conversations with teachers that we are seeing more students attend.
So I was talking with another district, I think at the multi-annual conference, and they were talking about attendance had an interesting approach to what they found when they analyzed district, and this is district-wide attendance, is that there were certain families that were where the focus was. So it wasn't about necessarily ones, so if the whole family was not coming, which may be in middle school or maybe in elementary school, if they focused there, that was where the big thing. So they focused on making sure that the families understood that all their students need to go. And I thought that was a really, I don't know if that would be a district level analysis that we need to do, but it might be interesting.
Yeah, and that's something just even at Showalter level, we really try to hone in on, instead of like we do attendance campaigns at like a level here, but we really have tried to, like you would in a classroom, right? Like meet students, meet scholars where they're at, meet families where they're at, and that's where we enlist the help of our family liaisons, our student support team, our social worker, our counselors. So we also have what's called the student support team at Showalter, and that is the social worker, counselors, Ms. Perez, myself, Mr. Kennedy, security, our re-engagement specialist, and we have our students of concern and we review that, and then whatever wraparound services. So I think with attendance, what I've learned and we're trying this year is it's just like it's multi-tiered in the sense of you gotta kind of hit it from a bunch,
Yeah.
like a bunch of different ways, but I would say the celebration is that because of number 6, we have all the teacher eyes on it. So we're all owning it versus it's an attendance office issue, you call, or it's a Miss Rieger issue, you call. Like, I am looking at it with a smaller team, but I'm focusing on the 20 consecutive day reports to unpack why those scholars are missing school. So it's the start of this work, but again, all teachers' eyes are on it, and we're talking about it as a grade level. Because maybe Ms. Perez has a connection with this family, or it's like, I call and I leave a talking points and I don't get a response, so that's been like the power in working across grade levels so far this year.
Yeah, we've asked all our schools to take this on as a district, I mean, as a school-wide goal, because it's showing as a trend. We had, our attendance was at 64% in 2023, and it's still low. It went down last year, and then we finally have recovered up to this last 2025 being at 66.7. So it's above where we were 2 years ago, and now we're working with our team to make sure that we have this as a strategic goal, because if they're not here, they're not learning. And so, yeah.
We can't engage when they're not here, but we are unpacking that too. Like, they're, you know, like the late in the morning, there's 2 groups. It's like, I'm hanging out with my friends, right? And I'm walking in late, and then there's barriers for some families, but we're working as teams to really dig into like why Scholar A does not maybe want to come to school, or all of a sudden is not coming to school. So should we?
Mr. Winger, can I ask a question about that? You were mentioning about that you have this homeroom.
Yep.
That's the first class of the day. I'm not familiar with homeroom, but
Yep.
what is that and why is that the first class of the day?
It's now the second class of the day. It
Okay.
used to be the first class. So homeroom, it is a 22-minute period in our day, and that's where we provide our SEL, our social and emotional learning. Right now, we are using the ruler curriculum. We'll be making a transition to Character Strong, but that's where scholars are learning things like the mood meter. So checking in on ways to regulate their emotions, ways to deal with conflict. And our homerooms are designed that the homeroom teacher that our scholars start with in 6th grade, they have the same teacher 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. It's like it's a home base for our scholars, but the main focus of that time is for our social, emotional learning. That's also where we do announcements. We have our college and career Fridays. And I am about to talk about what we do on Mondays and Wednesdays in Homeroom Connecting to our goals as well. So it's school-wide lessons that happen during homeroom.
And are those done in other districts as well?
Yeah, a lot of school districts might also call it advisory.
Yeah, that's what
So
Foster calls
the
it.
district that I came from, we called it advisory. Here we call it homeroom. I believe just Foster still calls
Calls
it advisory.
Yeah.
Is this class widespread though?
Yes. Yeah, it's
So it's
very
mandatory, right?
So that
So it's a mandatory classroom.
yeah, so every single scholar is assigned to an advisor or a teacher. And what makes it unique is that our normal class size, I'm gonna say 28. However, our advisory class, because we have every single staff member teaching, so the average homeroom class is probably more 18 to 20. And so it gives that kind of that smaller feeling. And at the beginning of the year, our teachers are able to really reach out to parents at the very beginning. Hey, I'm your homeroom teacher. And as an assistant principal, I get questions all day long from teachers saying, hey, so-and-so's mom was asking about, what are the expectations during, winter break and reading? And they're able to, that's kind of that direct connection. And if they don't if the parents don't feel comfortable just calling the main office and say, hey, can I talk to Ms. Krieger? It's really that staff connection so that they have somebody that they know they can always go to. And it's been really nice because we get questions during the summer. Hey, Ms. Krieger, we're just wondering, we're hearing this, and we're able to respond to families. So it's really nice. And then again, it's that connection with the teachers having that same student or the same scholars for 3 years. It makes them want to be there. And going back to them attendance, if you're connected to the school, you're going to want to be in the school. And it's really powerful. We'll go to basketball games and I'll see teachers there and they'll say, oh, I came because so-and-so's in my homeroom. And that's why they're there. So they're supporting their scholars, which is incredible.
So we're gonna move into the what are we doing portion here. The slides, I should have said, they don't really make sense because I would have sent you 100 slide deck. So you're probably like, why are there pieces of Uncrustables on the next slide? So math data talks, we, based on our comprehensive needs assessment, we included this in homeroom this year. So every Monday, and we did it on Monday as a way to kick off the week. So the whole school does math in homeroom on Monday. What's unique about this is it's real world. So pretend I just took you through 9 slides. It starts with, this one just starts with, I forget, but it's usually just a bar, no numbers, no title, and you prompt the student. So this has been really powerful for our MLL students because everyone can go, what do you notice or what do you see, can respond to that. So it goes slide by slide, little by little, a piece of the graph gets added. So you don't really know what you're looking at, but you're like scholars will be like, oh, it's it means this. And it's like, no, what do you notice? What do you see? So it's really, it's a strategy for us to really increase like math talk as well. So I apologize, this makes no sense, but this was the end of one that we did in homeroom. And you're looking at the number of Uncrustables eaten per week. Like this one was a huge hit. This is about NFL players and the Uncrustables that hit. So when I started this with, we want to make it more real world. So here's our like street data on this. The students are talking about this and they're talking about these in other classes because they're fun, but it's math and it's things that like mean something to them. So this was just, next slide, Ellen. This is like what they saw, and then there's usually like a follow-up and like a connection. So like, oh my gosh, Travis Kelce eats, how many Uncrustables? So again, I'm sorry, I didn't want to overload you with slides, but it's just a snapshot at what we are doing every single Monday in homeroom with our scholars this year, and our math team designs these every week. And Ellen, you go back 2 slides because I gotta stay true to my word. This is a picture of our August back to school days and our math leaders, our math team, teaching us how to do this and how to facilitate this with students. So I have some mid-year check-ins planned, a student survey plan to see the impact on engagement, or students thinking math is a little more fun and have a little more connection to it, and feedback from our staff as well. But just the response to this from scholars has been really exciting. They're talking about math and outside of math.
That's the internal of the students. Why does math matter?
Yes, no, I was gonna write that on the slide. How many times have you heard, when am I ever going to use this in real life? So like, we're hoping this is one strategy that really makes a difference and re-engages students in math. And the question is, are they seeing this in math class too? Yes. The goal of this would be to expand and have other content created in this. So like next on board would be science, like pull a graph from your content, ELA, so they can see math across the content. We're always saying literacy across the content. We do know and believe that math lives across the content areas as well. Go ahead, Ellen, because we're running out of time already. So I'm gonna have Ms. Perez, share about, building thinking classrooms. And what I will say about that is please come visit and see what math classrooms, what's happening in math classrooms. You will see and hear less teacher talk and a lot more student discourse, about math in our math classrooms presently.
So with the building thinking classrooms, this is a concept. It's not a way, it isn't a curriculum. It's a way to teach math. And one of our math department heads came to me probably 2 years ago and said, Cindy, the conference is going to be in Seattle. We absolutely have to go. And our entire team went to the conference, which was absolutely incredible. And what it does is it's a different way of teaching math. And it's no longer kind of, I'm old, and when I was in school, we sat and we listened and we diligently wrote down what the teacher told us. This takes the teacher, and the teacher is now the facilitator, and the students are doing the thinking, which is what we want to see. And when you go into a building thinking classroom, it's not going to be quiet. The children are not all going to be sitting down. And what you are going to see is you're going to see the scholars interacting with each other, and they're talking to each other about the math problem. They're actually, in some ways, I love to see them disagreeing with each other, because when I see them disagreeing, one will say, I think you need to do it this way and do this and this and this. And then you'll hear another one go, no, this is how we need to do it. And you'll see them going back and forth. You'll see them drawing pictures. You'll hear the academic discourse, and they're not talking about what happened at lunchtime. They are truly talking about math, they're talking about problem solving, they're talking about their own learning. And as an observer, I love to go in and kind of just walk around, and and it's very, very powerful, because what it's doing is our students are having to think. They're having to use their own voices, and they're having to explain their own learning, which is really, when we look at what is our overall goal, we want to create learners who are going to be able to think and go out into the real world and solve a problem involving Travis Kelce. And it's, when you have the opportunity to see it, it is just, it's mind-blowing. And we can go into a 6th grade classroom, and I can see, I still call our 6th graders our little guys, so I can see my little guys. Or what's incredible is also going in to our algebra class. And with algebra, they're at a whole different level, and that's even watching them solve a problem. I sit back and kind of listen, and I love hearing different thinking. So what we've done in Showalter, we will not have the data on this yet, because of course, we had several teachers who were working with building thinking classrooms. And then this last summer, the entire staff, as I said, went to the building thinking classrooms workshop. And I'm guessing it'll probably take 2 to 3 years to really see that everyone is embracing this, that our students are doing this. And then the overall goal would be that we take this beyond just math with building thinking classrooms, and that you're seeing this style of teaching throughout the building. And so kind of, it's really taking the philosophy of, we're all teachers of reading, and we're all teachers of math as well. And again, as Mr. Year said, I would love to have you come and visit any day. I could take you to a math classroom, and that it would not be scheduled, but I can tell you that this is happening, and it's very, very powerful.
Mr. Perez, am I understanding this right, that the students are spending the entire math course talking to each other?
So I will say that they're spending segments of the course talking to each other. But what would happen is, say, for example, on Monday, as the teacher, I've introduced a new concept and I've taught that. And then when you come in on Tuesday, I'm going to put you in a group with, say, four other scholars. And I'm going to give you a problem, and with the four other scholars are going to have to figure out how they're solving the problems together. So as the teacher, I'm not going to stand up on day 2 and say, okay, we're gonna do this all over again. It's for then, I've given you the skills and now you're applying those skills.
So kind of like a miniature lab type.
Absolutely, it's really, it's math application, and it is giving, I'm going to admit, we've been talking about, gosh, which scholars are we not, which scholars are not as successful? And not everyone can learn by just sitting and listening. You know, a lot of students need to be active, they need to be part of it. And they're also, it's incredible when you're hearing them talk, and when they're disagreeing and they're giving their opinion, you can hear that they're thinking, they're learning, and they're problem solving.
And do we see in other school districts, other schools, where this method has worked well, or do we have any data on that?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, the person who originally did the program actually came from Canada, and it's throughout the United States now that we are using the program. And when I went to the conference, I would say that the most fascinating part of it was to hear a lot of the elementary teachers. And one of them said, you know, I started using this for math and it worked. And then he said, pretty soon I found myself using it all day long. And I could pull up my percentages, but his percentages, kind of how students were retaining information, it went way up, because students learn by doing. And if I'm just listening to a teacher, eventually I'm thinking, what's for lunch today? Did they say chicken nuggets? And I'm trying my best to stay engaged, but chances are halfway through, I'm like, yeah, so am I getting 6 nuggets? However, if I'm in a building thinking classroom, I don't have time to think about my chicken nuggets, because I'm talking to my neighbor about how we're solving this problem. And, why do you think it was that degree? Why do you think it was this angle? And my neighbor will say, you know what? I disagree with you. This is the angle. And I'll say, no, look at it. I'm going to show you by drawing an angle that this is, where we're coming from. So we're involved. We're problem solving. And I should say that the teacher is walking around the whole time, and the teacher is also listening. And the other opportunity for the teacher is they're thinking, gosh, 6 of these groups have been caught on, right in the middle of the Pythagorean theorem. I need to review this. And so there's that piece of it also, because you don't want these 4 children to go for 20 or 30 minutes arguing about an angle. And so it's really an opportunity, though, for that teacher to get what we would call a formative assessment and kind of get an eye on, this is how they're doing.
Yeah, it's also a much better feedback loop, because typically if a student just gets there and, describes how to do something and then calls on the smartest kid in class, oh yeah, they got it. So then, we move on, and that's typically how that works. Whereas if you have everybody in the class engaged and then walking around, you're going to get a much better feedback loop about, okay, they're not getting this, or they're not, not getting that, and then I need to reteach this or whatever. So
I'd like to sign up and attend one of the classes.
Okay, wonderful. I will connect with you. Thank you.
We do have instructional rounds scheduled.
Instructional rounds too, yeah. And actually, we will show off during the instructional rounds.
Well, what I was gonna say about the instructional rounds is everything we presented tonight, we will make sure that you can come into the school and see. We'll design it that way, of course. So, a little more about growing our tier 1 instruction, and I'm gonna motor, because it's like, all the good stuff is still, so we do have instructional coaches at Showalter, particularly to support our multilingual learners. So not every teacher says, oh, I want to work with a coach and grow my practice. So we came up with this idea because my motto is everyone grows, and every teacher can grow their instruction. We're all at different like places instructionally, so we came up with a menu of ideas. So it's kind of a non-negotiable to engage with an instructional coach at Showalter, but there are some choices. So you may not be ready for a full-blown, let's do a unit together, but you can co-plan after school together. So this is our menu of options for our staff, how they can work with our instructional coaches. I'm gonna do these pretty quick.
And coaching is a really high leverage
Yes,
support
yes,
system.
and I'll talk about
Even
my
higher in professional development.
and well, it's embedded professional development and being a coach in the Tukwila School District, I would say that, and I know that, like all day long, and I'm building that out to then leverage, co-teaching with our coaches, as well through the next school year, but we're not there yet. Here are the next two slides that you're probably like, these don't make any sense, Principal Rieger. So these are two snapshots of Wordy Wednesday. So example of, we are teaching word parts, word association, but we're really getting at that tier 2 vocabulary. Like, yes, it is important to understand what a metamorphic rock is in science, but the word strategy, we could walk that across anyone's content area. So we have been teaching, again, like the parts. And then what's really important is giving our language learners, because we honor and we celebrate that first or even that second language, but given that launch pad of, oh, this is what that word means in my first language. So these are our school-wide, just two pieces of what our school-wide lessons are for Wordy Wednesday, which happens in homeroom on Wednesdays. So I'm just gonna.
I don't know if Dari and Pashto are Afghan, two languages speak in Afghanistan, so.
And then let's get into like the structures, like how do you do all this stuff, Showalter? So here is our grade level team meeting agenda, because what we know about PLCs or when we put staff together to collaborate, we do want some structures. We want some protocols, we want some templates that really capture the thinking and the work, and we want to make sure there's actionable like steps and outcomes and next steps, because what I have reflected on it and know about being part of the staff too is we get a lot of traction with something, but it doesn't get that cyclical critical friends group PLC that we that is high leverage and like highly functioning collaborative groups.
And PLCs are professional learning
Sorry, I
communities.
didn't
No, that's
have
okay.
any apologies.
So it's above it's beyond a team meeting. So team meetings are more around, are we going on the field trip? How much money do we have? But professional learning communities are embedded professional development within, where you look at data, you look at instruction, you're having conversations, you make plans to visit each other's classrooms. It's all around teaching and learning. So it's a higher level above a team meeting.
So back to about 40 minutes ago, this is what we do at staff meetings now. So if we have to talk about what bell schedule we would like for iReady testing, I push that out through the Google Classroom and a Google form, and we vote, because again, if we're coming together, we're data informed, they're gonna focus on instruction and centering it on our scholars. So you're gonna ask, how is that working? I'm gonna report to you at the end of the year and next year, like flipping this time, what was the impact on student learning, but this is an intentional place to get student data in front of grade teams. Go ahead, Ellen.
Cannot go into detail.
That's okay.
Should just be able to scroll down.
Sorry, person?
Oh. Okay, and then this is just an example of some work that's come out of the professional learning communities. So this is a tool where we worked as grade level teams to lean into vocabulary as a routine. We have to have some vocabulary routines in our instruction. and, the template that we use as grade level teams. And it's just one example of the work that is coming out of these professional learning communities. What do we know about professional development? Coaching is high leverage. But what do we know about instructions and middle school students? Things that are aligned and things that are predictable. So if we can have routines that cross, classrooms, we know that that will help our scholars. And then what you're looking at too is considering, because we're always looking through our MLO lens, how are we intentional about listening, speaking, reading, and writing across the content areas as well. So this is just kind of a neat tool I thought I would share. Go ahead, Ellen. Okay. So I've talked about a lot of this, but go ahead, Ellen, because I did that, we can fast forward. I always talk about my slides before they happen. I'd like to spend some time on our challenges, and some threats/challenges. I think you've heard this before, but securing substitutes, and thank you, Ellen, I know you're working on it. We're doing so much better, thank you, this year. Last year I had to cancel some release days because what we don't want to do is ask the teacher to use their time to cover a class, but I haven't had to cancel any of my instructional release days, and what those are is protected time where teachers, particularly co-teachers, or teachers working with a MLL coach, where they have the day to focus on looking at data, looking at student work, and really planning out their instruction. And they do have a substitute teacher, but it is always a thing that is hanging out there. Principal early release time. I think I've been very strong and creative in leveraging my time. I just put that on there as we build it as a district. How could it be even more cyclical? Where there aren't large chunks of time in between, like we did this cycle, now there's a teacher directed day, and then there's a holiday, and then there's and I did put in, I'm just putting a little plug in your ear, Dr. Pedrosa, I put something in our feedback today about the fusion of district and principal days. Okay. Just throwing that out there, everyone. Yeah. Next is, I've been thinking about, this one and building a master schedule, with my current FTE, how I can leverage, co-teaching partnerships. We have some co-teaching partnerships with our special education teachers and our general education teachers, where I would like to level up and move toward is the MLL coaches. It's not temporary and a cycle. Now, I'm looking at our makeup of our scholars in classrooms, and those are our partnerships that live in the master schedule. So I don't know if it's a challenge, I'm gonna tell you, because I haven't done it yet, but I'm gonna do it like for the next school year. And then family liaisons, just the ever-changing language groups and making sure that those are represented with our family liaisons, because we lean on them quite heavily, and we want to make sure that they can connect with our families. So I'm gonna go ahead and skip to celebrations and highlights.
I just want to say, on the co-teaching stuff, I really am looking forward to any reports that you have on co-teaching, because I'm talking to the legislature, I use co-teaching
Yeah.
all the time as a
Yeah.
reason to give us more money,
Yeah.
because we do more of it. So the more information I can get about the success of that, the better it's gonna be.
I was hoping you would say, Director Lorson, what do I need? And I would say, money for co-teaching. So we're not
I'm
gonna.
gonna add the district needs that too.
Yeah.
Very
But
much so.
we're gonna try some things inside the master schedule for semester two. I just met with one of our coaches, today, because we have some, trailblazers that have opted into the coaching. So let's leverage that. I'm gonna turn those into lab classrooms too, for the rest of the
Yeah,
state.
so those are the kind of stories I can just
Yeah.
pound away at the legislature with.
I know we're about out of time, so highlights and celebrations really quick. I have to highlight this because this is one of our SIP goals for this year, it's family engagement. I talked to families, I talked to Dr. Pedroza, I talked to students, and school wasn't welcoming. And families did not feel welcome. I'm like, well, I'm changing that immediately. So we did something called a back to school bash. We did school supplies away. We had food, and we served 175 families. So that is worthy of celebrating because I think that's the most families that stepped through the doors of Showalter in some time. And then we're doing something called Family and Community Connections, what's really at my core is authentic family engagement, not let's have the multicultural night, right? Or let's do the parent night. So I have a family connections meeting for with families every Thursday, second Thursday of the month, no agenda. I just sit in the library with families and they tell me what they want to talk about. So we've done that. We did a family movie night, we did the care night, that was just, whoa, families everywhere. I'm proud of this partnership with the Tukwila Community Center. Our scholars are not accessing the late night, the numbers aren't where they want them to be, but the challenge with getting to the Tukwila Community Center, but I'm like, a lot of our families, we know can get to Showalter, so, with Bellamy and Montoya, we brought late night to Showalter once a month. Lower scale though, it's only for middle school, scholars, but we ran, one back it was October, and then we did one after our school dance recently, and it was so cool. The dance was 5 to 7, and then the kids, I have to tell this story, it's funny, the kids, sixth graders come up to me, they go, Mrs. Rieger, where's the after party? We had 80 plus students stay after the dance for the after party. I mean, if you're not familiar with what that is, they bring gaga balls, we have snacks, we open the gym. It's just a safe place for our scholars to be on a weekend night. And then we have that partnership, Naomi, thank you. I know Naomi put it out in our publications. The Seattle Seahawks and the focus of that program was mental health matters. It was really cool. Our 8th grade scholars, they were in small groups and they made mental health posters for the school in collaboration with that program, and they're still up in the school. And then this one, Wizards of the Coast, for you Dungeons and Dragons nerds and Magic card nerds, not really nerds. They came, I actually met an employee, she's the mom of someone my son plays basketball with, and she said, we do this day of serve. Would your middle school be interested? And those of you who know me, I'm like, yes, let's make it happen for our scholars. So they dropped off one Hasbro game. They were travel games like Trouble, Connect Four. They dropped off a game for every single scholar on their day of serve, and we went around and every scholar in our school got one of those games. And then they stayed, and they had about 8 staff members, and we had our scholars sign up, and they stayed in the for the early release time, so about 1 to 3, and they taught them Dungeons and Dragons and Magic the Gathering. So that was a lot of fun.
I just want to say one thing, the one thing I will say about the Showalter team, there's no question in my mind, they are innovative and creative. First day, cell phone ban. When I went to visit Showalter, she had karaoke during lunch. Karaoke. And I'm sitting, and I actually sang a song. But I'm just saying, because I'm gonna sing, okay.
There is a video, we have it.
Oh, no. Okay, but my point is that, my point is that that is something that the student said, is that they wanted, if we're gonna not have our cell phones, what can we do? And that was something that the team, like, what can we do to make sure the students are engaged, not roaming the halls, not, right? And so, and it's not just karaoke, they have board games, I mean, they have other things in play. So the point is that they're really trying to think outside the box with, if we're taking something away, let's give them 10 more things.
Yeah.
Right, which I think is really critical, right? And I think, and it's actually developmentally appropriate, but it's also fun, right? That actually makes it really engaging. I just wanted to a shout out to the school, because they could have just said, okay, these are the rules, no cell phones on, they didn't. They said, how do we make sure you engage at lunchtime in a different way so that you can actually get to know your peers, which I think is pretty cool.
And that's a great way to address attendance, because then they want to get the feel for all those things.
And it really did make a difference, and the question we always get, how are the cell phones going? And I cannot celebrate our scholars enough with how they're doing with cell phones. I mean, we have an occasion, a few pop out, but at this point, I think it's habit, we all do it, right? You just go to, like, grab it or buzz it, like, so they are doing amazing. So
Yeah, I
let's
get that too, and I would say, so far it's going, what our students are reporting, it's going well, and they're reporting that the engagement's better, and everyone's shocked when I say that, because for them, some of them aren't doing, it's not rolling out as well in other places as, but I think because we have great creative, principals and staff who want to make sure that the students are getting what they need in replacement work, yeah.
And the discipline around bullying has gone down because we were having so many cell phone bullying issues, and I don't have those anymore. And I don't actually, this is full every year.
Well, knock on wood.
But yeah, it's really made it nice.
I have to excuse myself, I gotta get to another meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm looking forward, I have a proposition on my desk that wants to do some work in the middle schools, and so I said, well, I'll connect with you.
Please
And we
do.
can walk through what the possibilities are. So I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Proctor.
I was just gonna say, the bullying, that's one that's been on the students advisory list for many years. So that's a significant one that we need to put on the list of things that are being done to address that issue, so.
It's so much better.
Yeah,
Real quick, back to our math and, math goals. We have our Gear Up grant and partnership, which is just opening doors and providing opportunities for our scholars. And we're only year one into that. So over the summer, we were able to go on some really awesome field trips. So the scholars had summer school, but they could just come and go on these field trips as well. This is from Glendale. He is our Gear Up coordinator. So he gave us some numbers there. He also partners with me on family nights, as well as the late nights. And our big event that's coming up is on the next slide, Doctor for a Day. That's a partnership. It's a Gear Up program. It's a partnership with UW, and they're coming to our campus. 9 to 2, and the focus is neuroscience, so it's all kinds of breakout groups for our scholars. It's free. They give them lunch. I think we have space for like 200. I think it is. And then I think you put that plug college and career, because we need more adults to come talk at our college and career panel. I'm making eye contact with everyone.
I don't know, it's like 3 or 4 people I
Yeah.
can, and some of them are females and non-traditional. So my friend's the captain for American Airlines, like, I'll give you a list.
And what we're trying to do is get enough so we can build pathways, and students can say, oh, I think I'm interested in this pathway. And they would hear about careers, and then kind of like your undecided major type, students, like, I have no idea. So it would be more of like a hodgepodge of careers, but the more involvement we get in that, the bigger we can make it and do small groups instead of like, everybody sits on the stage and just answers the questions. Friday, we're going to the University of Washington, and we also we're taking some scholars to Nature Bridge overnight in April during spring break. So that is a really powerful partnership at our school as well. And the last thing I want to say is Showalter is the only school doing this. It didn't make the cut of the presentation. We have gone even more green at Showalter, and we learned that Showalter disposes of approximately 79,000 milk cartons every year, and they don't break down in the landfills. So when you come visit, we now have milk machines where students have reusable stainless steel cups, and yes, they're clean and sanitized. But the kids are like, Miss Reader, that's not clean. Yes, it is. But they just, you know, like you would go to like a hotel kind of buffet, they just push the little lever and they have a very cold cup of milk. We had King County visit our science classrooms earlier in the school year, so they learned about the problem with the landfill and how quickly it's building up. So if you didn't know about that, I just wanted to share that, because that's something that there was a lot of like, you're doing what? They're now going to carry their food and their cup of milk, and I'm happy to report that there is probably a decrease in milk spilling, actually. So that's something when you come to Showalter, if you come during lunch, something else we're really proud of. We've done some cool things with food service. We were able to reuse a display case that we didn't use, and now it's lit up, and the salads and the parfaits are in there, and lunch just got a little bit of a makeover.
That's
as
amazing.
well.
Well, karaoke too sounds like a wonderful time.
Contact some cold chocolate now, and say the karaoke. Welcome to show.
So just for the new board to know, is we actually, Toccoa School District, all of our schools, won an recycling award for being a whole district that's green. And so that's amazing that you're even doing more beyond that. So that's amazing. Yeah.
Okay, and that is the end, because I know I'm out of time, but I thank you so much for this opportunity. Thank you for listening. Thank you for letting us highlight our wonderful, wonderful middle school. It's pretty amazing, and so are our scholars. And I know that you're coming in April would be the instructional walk, so can't wait to have you, but you can come before April as well. Please, thank you.
Are there any questions?
Any other questions?
No, I just want to say, this is amazing, but the fact that you guys are actually getting student engagement away from the phones and, you know, building the community, building the expertise of, you know, it might be karaoke to some, but at the same time, that's bonding with their peers. That's getting away from the fact of, well, I can be over here and just, you know, talking smack about all these people, but now this is, oh, I'm face to face with you. This is student engagement. This is amazing. So thank you so much.
And here was my data point. Walking through the commons, we call it, and when you're sitting with your friends, but you're like, this is my own son does it. So it's like, no, they're socializing again. And constantly, Dr. Pedrosa, to your point, they're being kids again. Like they're doing kids stuff. They're 12, right?
Yeah.
So we're excited about just the whole vibe and makeover of what's happening at lunch, which is their social time. So it's exciting.
Yeah, I'm excited to see the results of the restructuring of literacy and math and all there's a lot of good stuff going on in there, which sometimes it takes a couple of years, but it sounds to me like we will see results fairly quickly, start to see results fairly quickly, because the transformation in terms of the students' attitude toward things and so forth, so this is really great to see, so. Okay, thank you very much. Look forward to great things from them, and we'll be up to see your school.
Thank you.
Let's see, so are there any public, we have the public comment period. Is there anybody either, if you're online, you can put a comment in the chat, or you can raise your hand. I guess we have nobody signed up and no written comments, so
There's no comment?
There's one.
There's no public comment, there's one person online, but they're.
Okay.
Oh, but it has no.
Yeah.
Okay, it has no. comments. Okay, so, need a motion to adjourn.
Motion or something.
Moved and seconded to adjourn, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, no, we're out adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, thank you.
To karaoke song?
So I have 3. But I got to do it.